What's up, guys? My name is Frank Macaluso, and thank you so much for tuning in to the E31 S85 project behind me. As you can see, last week we ended up putting in the S85, which was awesome. We did have a direct interference on the cylinder 5 primary into the thrust arm bearing mount that was located on the frame, but we ended up rerouting that and still maintaining our full-length exhaust, which is awesome. So we are good to go and all set there. Now, we're gonna be working on the next episode. We're gonna be finishing up our exhaust, we're doing our wiring, and we're gonna be doing our plumbing. So guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy while you maybe have a beer and enjoy that. Or if you don't like to drink beer, maybe, duels, or, water, or milk and cookies, It's not really 'tis the season, but you can do that, or maybe juice, or iced tea, or maybe Sunny D, or Fresca, or Johnny Walker, if you do like to drink. Liter of cola, perhaps. Maybe Killian's Red.
Is he literally going to do this the entire video?
I don't know. I zoned out after milk and cookies.
His videos used to be informative. Now Bruce Almighty sound clips.
He's just not funny anymore.
How about wine or spirits?
He's literally like Seinfeld trying to act.
Coffee or a latte.
I mean, let's just see what he'll do next.
He's losing it. His puns are terrible.
Jokes aren't corny. Or pina colada. Or sake. Hey, and while we're going international, let's go maybe right down to South Korea and have cheers soju. Or perhaps a Korean cake. Filters installed, lines are installed. You gotta keep in mind, when you're installing this stuff, everything will fit before anything is fully welded or integrated. So now I can just snap it all in place and see where all the chips lie. A little self-deprecation here as I go through the fuel line installation and quick disconnect flaring. And you'll see here that if my performance in the bedroom is anything like my fuel system diagnosis, then I probably couldn't last longer than 30 seconds. Well, more on that later, I guess.
Are you sure this is the place?
For those E31 guys, nobody wants two batteries in the back, only one battery. So what we're doing is we're doing that conversion. We're taking that power line off of the driver's side. We're gonna be going to a single battery conversion. We're gonna be going to an AGM battery, and this thing is gonna end up getting installed in its final location on the passenger side. On adjustable fuel pressure relay, you can adjust the diaphragm here to adjust the fuel going in and out of the engine. Pretty cool. All right, turning this over by hand. You can hear a click on that side. Now a click on that side. Click on that side. Click on that side. And I think it's the Vanos. I think it's coming from up here because that's the only place that it's happening. And when you try turning it over, you can hear it like it almost sounds like pistons are slapping like a connecting rod, but it's not that. Okay, so now we're actually just going to turn the engine over. Now, essentially, this engine is completely disconnected from the rest of the car, with the exception to the positive battery terminal. The DME is not connected. All I'm doing is just activating the starter solenoid in order to get oil to flow and pressurize in the system. Now I've got my oil filter housing, I've got my oil cooler, and I've got oil in the engine, and it hasn't quite flowed to everything it needs to. And what you're gonna find is that there's gonna be a slap sound that's coming from the engine. And that slap sound is actually the solenoids clicking and resetting every time because it doesn't have the oil pressure that it needs. But if you turn over the engine enough times, it actually will pressurize that system, and then that sound will just dissipate like magic. So let's try turning this thing over and seeing how it sounds. See if we can hear that and then see it dissipate over time. Now we stop. You can hear that slapping sound coming from above on the top of the cylinder heads. We'll wait a few seconds and then we'll give it another go and see if that sound goes away. All right, let's try again. There it goes. There it goes. That's it. Now that the sound is dissipated, I know that I have enough oil pressure to make this thing solid. Now, got to validate fuel pressure, and now I have to get the DME hooked up electronically, and I think we're going to be in great shape for that first start. Welcome to the rat's nest of wires. That's right. Today we are moments away from our first start, and I want to try to explain a little bit to you about what this is so that maybe to you it looks less complicated like it currently does to me. Now what I'm doing is I'm simulating as much as I possibly can before I turn that key and get that thing started. Now this is our modified harness to accommodate the SCS Delta DME. This is a completely standalone system provided by SCS Delta. This is a Tornado. It's a Delta 800S DME. And basically, there are two different connectors you need to wire for this. The first one being this 6-way connector. This is your electronic throttle, which has six pins, 2 potentiometers, high, ground, and then the signal wire for each of them. And that is going to my pedal, which is located right here. So that'll operate the throttle bodies, which hopefully I can demonstrate prior to turning the engine on for the first time, just to see if the throttle bodies work. The other thing is this guy. This is our body connector. This is the connector that's from the DME and talks to the rest of the car. Now that's where you need your power, your ground, your ignition, your fuel pump relay, your coolant fan relay. Those types of things are all outputted through this DME here. You can even use additional wires and inputs on these two DME connectors in order to do things like coolant temperature and oil pressure and all that other stuff. Now finally, there's this connector here, which is the factory BMW harness. This is the X6001, and this is what I've got hooked up to my ignition, my starter coil here. So that's where I would end up putting power directly to this, and you can hear right now. We are ready to start turning this thing over. So we've already turned it over. We already know that the engine is free of obstruction and noises, and that it should start when we first start it. But this is important because this has other things, other types of wires in it for controlling things like the AC compressor and oil temperature, things like that are in that connector. So now that I've kind of explained to you a little bit about what I've got here, you can see that I've got the mating connector to this guy already set up. This is the connector here, and this is the mate. So I've gotten the wires already hooked up to that. So I've got my power wire. I've got my grounds hooked up to my ground. And once I hook up the DME and hook up ignition power, I would expect that this light would to probably go on, indicating that the fuel pump is priming. Now, as I told you earlier, explained earlier, that I've got the fuel pump primed. I've already primed the fuel pump. I've got fuel in the rail. I can turn the fuel pump on manually anytime that I want through the X20. This is the X20. Okay, this guy here is my X20 on the factory E31 harness, and this wire here, if I were to put power to that directly to the power on the chassis, it would turn the fuel pump on. So I know that I've got a good fuel system. I know that I have my DME powers and grounds, and I know that that the engine is good mechanically. This is an Alpha N tune, so I don't need mass airflow sensors. I don't need really any of those other supporting systems as of right now. If I were to go to a factory DME, I definitely would need that. This here is my ignition wire. I've got my DME hooked up. It's grounded. It's got power. So if I were to hook this up to power, I would expect this test light to go on, which is essentially my signal coming out of the DME to control the fuel pump. Now, the fuel pump is going to be manually controlled. I'm just going to go on full bore, and I've got it regulated, so I'm not worried about that. But if I were to hook up power to the ignition that's turning on the DME, it should turn on the fuel pump, is what I'm guessing. That's basically like turning the key into accessory position 2. Ready? So I'm clearly looking for the light to turn on, and it's not happening. Extending my performance in the bedroom metaphor to this montage, 23 seconds sounds about right for me to explain what I'm doing. When you have a theory on how something is supposed to work, then doesn't, you need to either understand the system better to change your theory, or understand what you did wrong and adjust. Like, is the DME fuel relay output a 12-volt switch or a ground switch? Is the wiring correct? Does the DME have power and ground? Like, all these types of things you need to consider, and that takes time. And learning ain't easy, but the failures you experience during these roller coasters of highs and lows and doing drivetrain integrations are when the real learning comes in. So shut up, stop posting help threads immediately on forums, and just think about how things are supposed to work. Why did the fuel pump relay not turn on? Yeah,
Whatever circuit we're closing is still open.
yeah, we're trying to figure out whether or not, like, I didn't connect this ground yet. This is just the standard harness ground. I believe that needs to be connected to ground, and I've got another one here that needs to be connected to power, and I need to connect that to power. Now I know that there's a couple of other powers here. There's 2 of them in this X6001 connector. So those guys go to a fuse, and then it goes back to this power thing. So it actually supplies power to other things on the chassis, not necessarily to the DME. So I think I've got a good plan. I'm going to connect those powers and grounds and see what happens from there. So now, after looking at the powers and grounds a little bit more carefully, I did apply power to these through this wire here. It's going directly to battery power, which is where it should go. And also I applied the DME ground is going directly to the chassis, so that's good too. Let me power on. I'm not sure. See, the thing is, I want to learn a little bit more about the fuel pump control. In case you forgot the fuel pump output, perhaps this 10-second recap would help, and is probably more accurate to my bedroom performance. Extending my performance in the bedroom metaphor to this montage, 23 seconds sounds about right for me to explain what I'm doing. I'm not sure about how that's going to be wired yet, so I'm not actually going to try to do a 12-volt test light, because it could just be a really, really low current that doesn't even have enough power to light an incandescent bulb. So I'm going to forget about the fuel pump stuff. I'm just going to manually power the fuel pump, and then I'm going to turn over the engine to see if it starts. Let's give it a little bit of crank, huh? Okay, so now we're going to do this in 3 steps. Again, let me just confirm I have fuel pump pressure. Now that I have fuel pump pressure, I want to do ignition. Okay, everything just clicked. My heart is kind of racing a little bit because I'm a little nervous, but who isn't on the first start? Now I just apply power to the starter. Nothing yet. Let's just try applying fuel pressure while I'm running, right? While I'm cranking. I don't want to flood the engine. That's what I'm a little bit worried about, but we'll have to act fast. Well, faster. Pressure. And start. Nothing. Okay, turn the fuel pressure off. So there really isn't anything that should stop this from working, except perhaps, and I haven't done this yet, is that, yeah, I've got fuel pressure going into the rail, but the injectors aren't opening. Now, fuel injectors typically take a lot of current in order to operate, open and close, and those are these guys right here. Now, if I don't have power going to those injectors, somehow maybe for getting some sort of power, well, then that could be the cause. And if those aren't getting power, well, that could be why this thing isn't even firing up at all. So let me see if I can trace down the power to those injectors. So that's right, that X6011, that blue connector, pin 6, it's a green wire with a white stripe. You apply power to that, and you got that green relay, clickety-clack, click, 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 clack, clackety-clack. All right, so the fuel rail is powered up. Now let's put the power to the starter solenoid and see if we can turn this engine over, get it to fire. You ready? Hold on to your butts. Ha 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 ha! Yes! Whoa! Yes! All right, I'll take it. It runs! It runs! Maybe not good, but it runs. Yes, it runs. Okay, it started. It was quiet. Maybe the mufflers are doing its job. Maybe I don't have the exhaust valves open. That's okay. It's all right. It's all stuff I can take care of later. All right, it ran. That was the first time. When was the first time this thing ran in? When was the first time this thing ran in? 10 years. 10 years. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. I don't know if I have to reset power or whatever, but we'll try. Oh, you know why? I don't have constant fuel pressure. That's why it's not running. Okay, let me try that. Ready? All right, it's got fuel pressure. The throttle is not working at all. The pedal's not working. I don't know what it is, but I can figure that out. It's running. It's running. Now it's gonna get hot. How does it sound? No, not very good. We don't know that yet. But it's running, it's idling. No crazy oil leaks. All right, let me try removing ignition. So bear with me here as I feel it necessary to close the loop in a 15-second recap on the fuel pressure relay output endeavor, which, if compared to my bedroom performance, would tell an accurate story. In case you forgot the fuel pump output, perhaps this 10-second recap would help, and is probably more accurate to my bedroom performance. Extending my performance in the bedroom metaphor to this montage, 23 seconds sounds about right for me to explain what I'm doing. I found out that the fuel pump relay output from the DME is a ground switching relay activating device. Is not power. So that means that the DME grounds a signal to a relay, not applies power. What that means is that if I were to apply power to ignition, turning the DME on and also turning this test light on, which is basically the signal from the fuel pump, you'll see that the light goes on and then it goes out automatically, meaning that the fuel pump is ready to go and it's ready to ground switch. It runs, and man, that was fun. It was fun. Holy crap. Quiet. A lot quieter than that LT1, wasn't it? Press the clutch pedal in. Holy moly, it runs. Now it's just a matter of just figuring out everything else from here on out. The engine works. Okay. If anybody has ever gone through a first start, if you guys ever knew what it's like to go through a first start in an engine, probably one of the most rewarding experiences you'll ever have. And I've got about like 7 of them under my belt that I've actually recorded. And it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling of accomplishment. It's an amazing feeling of, all the work that you put into a project. And this is probably one of the longest projects I've ever had in my life. This is about 10 years going, and I finally just got it started. So it's just like unbelievable to me. So let's get on to the next thing. Let's get on to the next thing.
I don't know if it's the booze. He might actually be funny.
Yeah, he's not that bad.
Thanks.